different now.
Hey guys, welcome back. In one of my videos that I made, I think it was the first one about the coming Civil War, which I'll talk about in a minute. One of my subscribers asked me a question. She asked me, why do I feel that Generation Z is far more conservative than Millennial Generation or Generation X or the baby boomers? Because the other generations really no longer matter, at least demographically. I know some of them are still alive, good for you, but they don't matter demographically. First, let me explain a little bit for those of you who didn't watch that video. I suggest you go back and watch it. I'll link it below. But this is my personal analysis. What's happened ideologically in this country is that the right moved a little bit to the center in the last 50 years. The right did not move more right. The right moved more towards the center. Actually, the right was dragged to the center, to be more precise. The left, however, turned around, bought a motorcycle, and just ran off the cliff. They just ran off the cliff straight into the loving arms of Islam. Or at least that's where most of them are headed. What do I mean by this? I'll link another video below, a Rush Limbaugh video. Now, I don't particularly like listening to Rush Limbaugh. I do not agree with a lot of his stance. I think he's a great speaker, don't get me wrong. Certainly a pioneer in radio and a very strong and articulate personality. I don't have to agree with everything. And when I say I don't like him, I don't know him personally. I mean his show. It doesn't speak to me. And that's okay. There are other people that do, right? This is conservative tent. It's a very big tent. He represents a part of the conservative movement that I don't agree 100% with, but for the most part, our core values are aligned. And that's what's important. But he said something that bears repeating. And I'm paraphrasing. Actually, I'm not going to paraphrase. I'm going to say this in my own words. And then you can go and watch his video. When I was 20, right, I was apolitical. And when I say apolitical, that means I don't really care. I didn't care about the Democrats. I didn't care about the Republicans. I just knew that no matter who was elected, I was screwed. That's the only reason. That's the only thing I knew. That's the only reason I wasn't involved in politics. I tried to be. When Al Gore was running, I supported him. I'm so sorry for that. I really apologize. I wouldn't have supported Bush either. And what's happened is that the ideologies have gotten so far apart that they can no longer find a middle ground. The middle ground is so far away from each other that, let me put it to you this way. If the conservatives are here and the liberals were here, the middle ground would be here, which would be acceptable to both, right? But if the liberals are, let me put my hand off screen, here, and the conservatives are here, and the middle ground is now here, that's not acceptable because that would require the right to become the liberal of yesterday. That's never going to happen. So the ideologies have shifted so far that there can be no middle ground. There can't be a middle ground. You cannot convince conservatives to give up their conservative values and ideologies and religion and say, hey, embrace the left. And you can't tell the left, hey, you know what? Why don't you come over, sit down, go to church, read the Bible, or not the Bible, read the Holy Book of the Jews, or read the Bhagavad Gita, or read any of the conservative religious books. Or if you don't like that, why don't you study philosophy? A little Nietzsche, a little Spinoza, a little Kant, even though they weren't all conservative, but it's a good way philosophy is a great way to be able to understand different ideologies. The left isn't going to do that. They're not into that. The left is now regressive. Remember, the left is not progressive. The left is not liberal. The left is regressive now. Anti-free speech, anti-guns, anti-10 amendments to the Constitution, Look, if you look at, and this is interesting, and I want you to do this, look at the political rallies on the Conservative side, American flags everywhere and the love for your country and America. You go to the left, there isn't a single American flag. The American flag is now considered a racist symbol. Let that sink in for a moment. That flag that my father fought for, my grandfather fought in World War II for, that every generation of my family that has been in America has fought, bled, and died for, is now considered a racist symbol. And we're Hispanic. I guess we're Uncle Toms or sellouts, right? What's happened is that, well, anyway, that's why there's a coming civil war. Now, to answer the question, why is this generation more conservative? The answer is they're not conservative. They're libertarian. But they're more aligned to classical libertarianism, which has now become the alt-right. Where actually the alt-right encompasses a wide range, but the left can't see that, so everybody's alt-right. You don't believe in them, everybody's alt-right. Which is very sad. Very, very, very sad. So this generation that's growing up, actually before that, there's an ebb and flow to nature. We see this everywhere. There are cycles. Everything is governed by cycles. Females have a monthly cycle. The earth goes around the sun. The sun has magnetic cycles. There are cycles of light and dark. There are cycles of day and night. Everything is a cycle. Everything. If you believe in Hinduism, like I do, they teach you that in the beginning there was a vibration. There was the Om. In Christianity, they say in the beginning there was the Word of God. And the Word was without form. They're speaking about the same thing, the exact same thing. In the beginning, there was a vibration. If you go to quantum mechanics tells you the same thing. In the beginning, there was a vibration of string theory. They're all consistent. There's no one that really disagrees with the other if you truly understand it. They're all speaking about the same thing. With that said, there's an ebb and flow to everything. You cannot go too far to one. Our bodies function the same way. Epinephrine, norepinephrine, dopamine and serotonin. We get too much serotonin, we die. Too much dopamine, we die. But a balance between the two, we're normal. Everything is about balance. Everything is about the ebb and flow. But everything has entropy. So if you notice or if you've read or studied physics, you notice that, or chemistry, the laws of thermodynamics, I believe it's the second law, everything tends to go towards entropy. Entropy is when little mistakes in the system start building up and start causing systemic failures in the system. A great way to understand this is if you go home, and this is relevant, by the way. I know it doesn't seem like it's relevant, but it's actually all relevant. If you go home and you go to, I go to my house, right? This is a great example because my wife complains about this all the time. Sorry, my nose. We'll clean the house, right? She'll clean the house, and I'll clean my room, my man cave. So, and I'll go in there and I'll bring a few books home, right? A few books that I want to read, that I'm researching, whatever it is that I want to know. And I put it down, then I go and I play a game, and then I play with my pad, and then I do whatever I'm going to do. And I go get a cup of coffee, I put it down, and I forget. Next day, I bring home another book. I organize my books here, but at the end of the week, my room's a mess again. My little man cave is a mess. And unless you put energy back into the system, you cannot restore it, which is what we're trying to do right now. Restore the system that has had too much entropy, politically speaking. So if you understand physics and you understand philosophy and you understand a little bit of theology, you can easily understand politically what's going on. You don't have to be an expert. You just got to have a wider view of different sciences so you can understand what's happening. So with that said, with the ebb and flow politically, the flow, so to speak, has been the left. Now the ebb has to pull it back. This is what Generation Z represents. Now going more towards a psychological analysis of it, if you will. Children, when they're younger, tend to be the opposite of the previous generation. As they grow older, they tend to kind of coalesce, right? So I didn't like classical music when I was a child. I hated vegetables, and I couldn't stand psychology. I became a doctor. I'm a vegetarian, and I align a lot with my parents' values, more with my father than with my mother's, right? It happens, but we all go through this phase. Generation Z has something that the other generations didn't have, and that is they have the internet, and they have a good internet. When we were children, or sorry, when I was when I was a young adult, right, or a teenager, I was using the internet. It was terrible, slow, inaccurate, difficult to use, difficult to find things. And as I grew older, things got better. The millennial generation enjoyed a better internet, but not that great. This generation has everything at their fingertips. They can go and check very quickly if what you're saying is correct. They can fact check you in a heartbeat, and they do. That's what's beautiful about it. They're more intelligent, more attuned. They see things faster. They network with each other. They fact check. And what the left is claiming, a lot of Generation Z is saying, wait a minute, I call bullshit on that. That's not true. So there's an ebb and flow. In addition to this, every culture has a counterculture. Paul Joseph Watson has very clearly pointed out, I'm not sure if he coined this, or not coined it, but I'm sure he was the first one to point it out, but he did point out that that the right is now the new counterculture, and this is absolutely true, because the left is so dogmatic, so repressive, especially when it comes to institutions of education, where you're supposed to be able to have ideas, where you're supposed to be able to have discussions, where my teacher once told me, pretend that you are a pedophile and the police come to you. How would you philosophically argue this? Well, that was actually kind of fun. I have to put myself in a different mindset, try to understand their mind as opposed to mine, be objective, use facts, and come up with arguments. Even though I knew I was going to lose the argument, but still it was a great exercise in intelligence. Or when I was in Model United Nations in high school, they said, guess what? You are the French. That's right. And we want you to argue why Germany should have a military. Many of us were like, how the hell am I going to argue that? This was, by the way, in 1992. So this was quite a while ago. This was right after the fall of the Berlin Wall. It was very difficult to argue, but it was a lot of fun because we had to go in and understand the German point of view. You can't do this anymore. And Generation Z that's growing up is really pissed off. They're really upset because they have to hide their point of view. So again, like a pendulum, it's swinging way back to the right. And we should be very thankful to the baby boomers and the millennial generation for this. They are the ones that caused this. We didn't. Generation X, we realized we didn't want to become the generation that carries the banner of conservatism, of classical liberalism and freedom. But we had no choice because we saw that it was an existential, what's wrong with me today? Existential threat. All right, I think I'm coming down with a cold. So we had no choice but to pick that up. And Generation Z is going to be our allies because we have no choice. We've all been pushed to the alt-right when none of us were alt-right to begin with. But now we're racist, we're bigots, we're misogynists. Stop me if you've heard this one. We're all Islamophobic or Uncle Toms or sellouts. This is what it's come down to. So, I don't know if this answers your question. I hope it does. Everything in life is a balance. Well, for the most part. Sometimes too much entropy acquires in the system. Sometimes too many small mistakes cause the systemic failure and the system collapses. Fall of the Roman Empire. Fall of the Ottoman Empire. Fall of Prussia. Carthaginians, the Mayans, the Aztec, on the Olmec, the Toltec, on and on and on. Throughout history, great empires have failed because systemically they were not able to balance. We must be careful we don't go too far to the right, although we're not in any danger of doing that today. We were in the 1960s. And the pendulum swung, and now it swung too far, and it's going to swing back. We have to make sure it swings back. If we don't, this will be the fall of the American empire. Future historians will write about this great experiment and what a failure it was. And it will plunge the world into darkness because nobody else is willing to stand up for human freedoms. Nobody else is willing to stand up for the little guy. Nobody else is willing to stand up for humanity and the progress that we have made. This is why it's important. And this is why we should be thankful to Generation Z for being able to fact check everything, for being able to open up their minds at such a young age. And they will be politically active. I hope this answers your question. If you guys have any other questions, any comments, please feel free to comment below. Do like this video. It helps me a great deal. Share it if you can. If that's not to your fancy, I understand. Comment. If you feel that you have something to say, or you feel that I'm wrong, comment below. Or you want to expand upon a point, comment it. If you think I forgot something, comment. Please like this video. Thank you very much. If you want to be notified of whenever I make a new video, make maybe 2 a week, try to make 3 a week, go and click the little bell below and you'll be notified. Do check out the videos in the description that I mentioned and, well, expand your mind, right? That's what we're all in here for. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.